Ladies and gentlemen, this is the big one. We finally have an answer as to what happened to Gohan in Dragon Ball Daima, and it is not going to satisfy you at all. We're also going to be going over a few more Dragon Ball Daima interview tidbits that I think are very interesting and good to know. Also, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero scrapped some very good content in regards to how Super Saiyan 4 Goku was going to work, so we'll be talking about that, and Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta in Dragon Ball Daima, so they really dropped the ball there. And then Toyotaro actually dropped a bombshell of an interview where he revealed some information that really leaves a lot of people going, maybe this guy is the guy to continue Dragon Ball after all. A lot of people, a lot of haters I should say, were kind of poo-pooing on Toyotaro, saying he did not have what it takes, especially as a writer. But Toyotaro in this interview drops some information that will leave you going, yeah, I think this is actually the guy. Alright, so as promised, let's get into this interview. Once again, this is an interview coming off of the Dragon Ball Daima Blu-ray collector set that was only released in Japan so far, translated from Vinixis. Vinixis posted this onto his Twitter. He says, even though Gohan Mini never appears, there's an unpublished design for him. GOKU says, we had the sensei draw him, just in case. And of course, whenever they reference the sensei, they're talking about Toriyama. They say it would have been a good idea to include him in at least an eye catch, so there you go. As I promised, an unsatisfying answer. They literally had Gohan designed just in case and decided not to use him. Now, this is a crazy thing because whenever it came to the writing of the show, Toriyama was deeply involved, but there's other people working alongside him. And none of those people ever thought to include Gohan in the script. But he was drawn, and he was included in the Dragon Ball Z flashback sequence. He was mentioned, of course, in episode 1, talking about how he had his studies, so I thought that made sense. But what would have made sense as well was if you included him in just one scene of him as a Gohan Mini character, like they say here. So they had an unpublished design for him. Now, that's the craziest thing. You had Toriyama design a Gohan Mini, but you haven't published it. I don't understand why they wouldn't publish it. I think they should publish it. So yes, Gohan Mini was cut from the series, and not very fun, not very good information. But we do have another piece of information that I think is very interesting. So, if you guys remember, there were early reports that Dragon Ball Daima was originally going to be a streaming web series. A lot of people reported this, and then it turned out not to be the case. Turns out, that actually might have been very reliable. So, it says here, initially, neither the format nor the release date had been decided. As GOKU explains, they started working without worrying too much about those aspects. That's why the first episode ended up longer than expected. There were no concrete plans for runtime or distribution. So because there were no concrete plans, maybe throughout the development process they floated the idea of making it a streaming web series and then decided, you know what, let's just go with the traditional anime route. But then I think they ended up making it premiere late at night, which I guess is unusual in Japan for anime like shonen, and it was probably expected, from what I'm understanding, that it should have aired earlier in the morning in Japan, but they went ahead and aired it at night for their new block, which is very interesting. Very cool, shows you how confident they are in the Dragon Ball brand. But one thing I find interesting was that they started this project and really did not know if they're going to make it a streaming web series or if they're going to make it a traditional anime. So it's very interesting that that rumor that came about very early was possibly very legit, and really goes to show just how much things change in development. Another piece of information I wanted to go over is the fusion bug. Yeah, the fusion bug. Let's go ahead and go over that because a lot of people were very angry about that, and it turns out that might have been Toriyama's idea. The question is, when you read Toriyama Sensei's story, please tell us what surprised you the most. And this was an interview conducted with Yuko Kakihara from the Dragon Ball booklet. So their role was the series composition and script. So of course they were working very closely with Toriyama. They said, I was surprised that battle scenes weren't included more than necessary. I like the early atmosphere of Dragon Ball, so I felt something close to that in this work and took it took to it very much. Sorry again, I get a little bit because this is translated from Japanese to English, so the phrasing is just a little bit off from what I normally read. So I kind of stumble over my words sometimes. So bear with me. I was also astonished that even though a kind of bug called Kutsuki Mushi appeared, it wasn't used. When you introduce an item, you tend to want to include a scene where it's used, but I felt Toriyama Sensei's decisiveness in leaving it out. So this is of course the person that was working with Toriyama to write the script. The most interesting thing is there's not a hard confirmation if this was something Toriyama intended or if he forgot about it. Because he said, I felt Toriyama Sensei's decisiveness in leaving it out. Now, he says he felt it. Now, that doesn't mean that this is what Toriyama originally intended. This is just what, what's his name again? The script, Yuko Kakihara. This is just what they interpreted from the script, from what I'm understanding. So, this is probably a Toriyama original idea, or this is probably something that his collaborator decided on, just because that it was his interpretation that Toriyama meant for it to not be used. But again, this could be a case where Toriyama forgot. So I wanted to go over that and kind of include it in this video because that was such a big controversial thing at the time, and it still is controversial that they did not use the fusion bug. Final Dragon Ball Daima interview tidbit we'll be going over is addressing some misinformation, and you'll probably be seeing this over the next few days. And it's got some people riled up, and then other people are having to comment back and correct it. So we'll just go over this. I'll explain to you where the misunderstanding is coming in, and then we'll just correct it. So it goes like this. When Yashima received Toriyama's first draft of the script, the text was still incomplete. He didn't know how the plot would develop or how it would end. Reading the sensei's original outline, I understood that it was set after the Majin Buu saga, but honestly I was still wondering how it would really unfold afterward, since the sensei's outline only went halfway. What kind of story would take shape? So some people have taken this to say that Toriyama wrote only the first half of Dragon Ball Daima and then he passed away. That's just not true. This project started in 2020. Toriyama died a couple years ago, but the scripting process, especially the outlining process, was definitely done before then. So what they're talking about here is Toriyama wrote the outline for the first half of the series, and then he wrote the outline for the second half of the series after they got into development over the halfway point. So it's just an interesting case of people reading this in a vacuum and not understanding the context or any of the other interviews. And again, there's a lot of interviews that Vinixis is posting, and I can't go over all of them because we only have so much time in this video, and I don't want to make it like a 50-minute video. But you can go ahead and find these interviews for yourself and go through them and really see what I'm talking about. And you'll find that Toriyama was a workhorse even in his old age. He was doing a lot, but a lot of people around him were doing a lot as well. So whenever you see something about Toriyama only working on the first half of the series, that does not mean that he passed away before he could finish it or that he handed it off to somebody else. That just means he wrote the outline for the first half and then the outline for the second half, and then during the wait for the second half, the director of the anime was talking about his anticipation for seeing the second half. So I just wanted to issue that statement or correction or whatever you want to call it at the end of this Dragon Ball Daima interview segment, just to make it clear what's going on. Alright, this next one is going to break some hearts. So as you guys are aware, if you've been following me on YouTube for a while, you would know that the Dragon Ball Sparking Zero Daima DLC Pack 2 was very disappointing how they handled Super Saiyan 4 Goku Daima. And it looks like, according to Cherry Minis on Twitter, who, from what I understand, is a bit of a data miner or a modder or something like that, something along those lines. But basically, they have access to basically open up the Sparking Zero files and see how the game works. Turns out, Goku Super Saiyan 4 Daima is listed as 04, implying there's a base Goku Daima rotting in Spike Chunsoft HQ. They also replied to somebody in the comments who said, is Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta listed as 03? And they say, yes. That makes sense why his intro acts like a pseudo-transformation. And then they posted this, which is a look at their model. So this is what Vegeta's face looks like briefly when you select him in the game, where he transforms into Super Saiyan 3. So it looks like The staff behind the Sparking Zero DLC cut base Goku from Dragon Ball Daima, probably cut Super Saiyan Goku, Super Saiyan 3 Goku, and Super Saiyan 4 Goku, since Super Saiyan 4 Goku is listed as number 4. Now, I don't mean they cut Super Saiyan 4 Goku as in, they cut him completely. He's still in the game, but I just mean as a transformation for base Daima Goku. Again, same thing for Vegeta. He's listed as number 3, so they probably just cut base Vegeta, Super Saiyan Vegeta, and then the transformation for Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta. And this is something that a lot of people from day one had a problem with, because Dragon Ball Sparking Zero's whole appeal was copying the Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi style of gameplay and just having that richness, that authenticity of the Dragon Ball universe, the feeling of powering up and transforming and getting stronger. That all went out the window in Dragon Ball Sparking Zero Daima DLC Pack 2, the overall third DLC pack for Sparking Zero, when they released Super Saiyan 4 Goku and Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta all on their lonesome. Not to mention that whenever it came to Goku Mini, they completely skipped over Super Saiyan 2 and Super Saiyan 3 and just had Super Saiyan 4 Goku Mini. So now you have base Goku Mini, Super Saiyan Goku Mini, and Super Saiyan 4 Goku Mini. And it feels really weird because they included Vegeta Mini Super Saiyan 1, Super Saiyan 2, and Super Saiyan 3. So a lot of people are very dissatisfied with, or unsatisfied I should say, with how Sparking Zero's DLC was handled, and this is just like a splash of ice cold water in your face that really wakes you up like, holy crap. So you're telling me that at one point in development, which is probably at the beginning of development obviously, they intended on actually doing things right and then decided not to. Some people are speculating, and I guess this is probably a confirmed report, but I'm not sure, so I'm just going to leave it up as a rumor that the Sparking Zero DLC team is kind of small, and they're basically working with scraps and doing the best they can. But still, if you can't even do a Super Saiyan, or at least do a base Goku and a base Vegeta, you probably could have scrapped a Goma form, you know what I'm saying? You probably didn't need to have Super Saiyan 2 Mini Vegeta in the last DLC pack if it was going to cost you some of these other resources. So again, just a situation that is very frustrating for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero players, and it's sad that that's the story of the game. Hopefully they announce another DLC pack, and hopefully they actually land it. Now, I guess they did actually do a stage in this final DLC pack, or what is reportedly, not reportedly, but rumored to be the final, because they haven't announced anything new yet for any Dragon Ball Sparking Zero DLC. So we at least got a stage, but it's kind of disappointing how they handled the characters, and that seems to be the story with this game most of the time, is how it was a letdown, so that's unfortunate. Alright, and as a quick surprise, apparently they're doing a Dragon Ball Minecraft DLC. Not really too big on Minecraft, so I'm not exactly sure how this is going to be handled, but the website says stuff like you're going to be able to use Kamehamehas, you're going to be able to turn Super Saiyan, things like that, so that's pretty cool. Figured I would mention it at least in this video to talk about it. I don't think a lot of people are going to click on this for the Minecraft stuff, so I probably won't even mention it in the thumbnail or the title. But I wanted to at least mention it in the video itself, and just inform people that yes, if you are a Minecraft player, you're getting Dragon Ball Z. Alright, let's talk about the most exciting thing that I think I'm going to talk about in this video, and it's Toyotaro in this new interview silencing the haters. This is coming from Anime Mind Probe on YouTube, and I'm only going to be talking about this section of the interview in their video, and I debated on how to handle this because I want to basically go off of what Toyotaro says verbatim, so we're just going to let this small segment in the interview play and then apply some commentary as we go through it, just to make things a little bit transformative, and that way I'm not directly stealing this dude's interview. So again, you can go ahead and go to his video itself, Anime Mind Probe. There it is. That's the video. Let's go ahead and jump into it.
アニメが始まるので、アニメを盛り上げるためにコミック漫画も一緒に載せていって、相乗効果でドラゴンボールを盛り上げていこうっていう集英社の意図のもと。
So right there, I think this is something that people have known for a while, but Toyotaro is just basically establishing it. They had the manga that was coming out to promote the anime. Of course, now we're in a different situation where the
コミ
manga
ック
has outlasted the anime, but I just always find that so
漫画も
interesting.
一緒に載せていって相乗効果でドラゴンボールを盛り上げていこうっていう集英社の意図のもと僕は書いてくれって言われて書くことになりました、最後の方の特徴絵柄の特徴おそらく鳥山先生はだんだん絵を描くのが辛くなって
And for people who aren't aware, this guy sitting next to Toyotaro is Toriyama, who was Toriyama's original editor on Dragon Ball.
できててかつ、勢いで描けるように定型性で描けるようになってきたのでかなり勢いのある、時間を短くしながら描いてた絵ではあるんですけども、個人的には自分の漫画はその3年後だっけなその後の話なので同じ絵柄で続けていくのが正しいなと思ったので、
And so Totaro's talking about how he imitated the Dragon Ball Z Boost Saga style for Dragon Ball Super, which I think he says that, but if I'm being honest, it's very similar to how he was already drawing in Dragon Ball Heroes and Dragon Ball AF. So this may be a bit of fluff on Totaro's part to kind of post, or not posthumously, or like he's basically retconning his own art as purposeful, if that makes sense. I think it's just his style and imitating the last Dragon Ball Z arc that Toriyama was involved with. But maybe he's right. Maybe that was his methodology whenever he created Dragon Ball AF.
その絵柄を真似してただ僕は鳥山先生みたいに早く描いてあんなに上手に描けないので、丁寧に描きつつも雰囲気を残せるようなのをチャレンジして、描けるように心がけて描いていきましたテレビアニメが放送されている間のスーパーは、脚本が一つであったので、力の大会
Alright, so this is the big one. So he says he worked with Toriyama's original scripts until the Tournament of Power. And I think totally not Mark, and a lot of people have done interviews about this where the anime staff and Toyotaro both worked with Toriyama's scripts, and then they both took liberties in the creative department and did different things. So it's really hard to decide which version of Super is the true Toriyama canon because of the fact that they were both written from outlines, basically. So that's something we knew. But this next part is, I believe, from everything I've researched, new information.
大編まで全部あったので鳥山先生が書いた作品があったのでそれを元に書いてましたただ勝手に書くわけじゃなくて書いたものを鳥山先生に見ていただいてそれが OK ですっていうやり取りで、力の大会までは書いていましたでそれ以降に関しましては、一応その後に、僕のオリジナルで、モロ編っていうか、銀河パトロール囚人編っていうのがあるんですけどもそれに関しては僕が書いた脚本を書いて
So there is the new bit. So from what we've been told about the Tournament of Power arc, obviously, that was Toriyama with Toyotaro, and then afterwards with Moro and Granola, people kind of had this understanding that Toriyama was still giving him like the broad plot outlines, and then Toyotaro was fleshing it out. And it was originally, from the interviews I've gathered, they talked about it as if Toriyama mostly let Toyotaro create the Moro arc, but Toriyama still had creative involvement at the basis of it. And then for the Granola arc, which he's about to talk about, Toriyama mostly had his outline, and then Toyotaro built off of it. What this interview is revealing is that Toyotaro basically just straight up created the Moro arc, and then Toriyama just approved it. So let's just go ahead and let him explain it himself.
それによって鳥山先生に見ていただいてこれで進めていいよってなったので僕が、僕の自分の書いた脚本に基づいてストーリーを書いていったんで絵を描いていったんですけどもそれも毎回、45ページ毎回見ていただいてこれで OK ですかっていうふうに確認しながら進めていったような感じです。
毎回45ページまで
So we'll still go through with the rest of the segment, but that is the big information that I think is so interesting. So you're telling me a lot of people give Toyotaro a bad rap when it comes to his writing, and I always liked his writing. And you always saw in the Moro and Granola arc, Toyotaro be a little bit more unleashed when it came to his writing abilities. At least in my opinion, you saw that. And you can go to my Dragon Ball Discourse podcast that is on hiatus right now, but we had a episode on that where we talked about Dragon Ball Super arcs, and the Moro arc and Granola arc are some of my favorite arcs in Dragon Ball Super. And it's because it feels a little bit more like Dragon Ball Z, and you can tell that Toyotaro is less burdened by the very strict Toriyama outlines that were being created for the anime mainly. Like Toyotaro says, it was originally created for the anime, and then the manga is kind of like this promotional piece. But at that point, after the Tournament of Power, the manga became the main thing, so Toyotaro didn't have to rush it to kind of play, like, he didn't have to race to catch up to the anime anymore. He could take his time to tell his story, and you can tell that's where the manga really started to improve a lot. So it's interesting that Toriyama apparently liked what Toyotaro was doing so much that Toyotaro was just able to write what he wanted to. Toriyama approved it, and then Toyotaro drew it, and then Toriyama approved it. And of course you would have corrections, and Toriyama probably pitched him some ideas, but just knowing that Toyotaro wrote most of the Moro arc, and a lot of people love the Moro arc. A lot of people didn't like it at first whenever it was coming out, but now all you hear is, I want Moro animated. Let's animate Moro. Moro is great. They love the Moro as a villain. So you guys, I'm not talking about everybody, but you guys know who I'm talking about. Those of you who really give Toyotaro a hard time, keep in mind, this is the guy who basically just did the Moro arc. And it was really good. It felt like Dragon Ball Z. So when the Dragon Ball Super manga continues, this is the guy. I have full faith in Toyotaro to handle Black Frieza well, perfectly, I would say. Alright, let's continue.
毎回見ていただいてこれで OK ですかっていうふうに確認しながら進めていったような感じです。
毎回45ページもある
45ページで月刊誌なんで、次はグラノラ編か。グラノラ編に関しましては、鳥山先生が実はある程度プロットを書いていただいたので、それをこちらで広げさせていただいて書いたという形になりますので、シリーズによって作り方が違ったという感じです。
鳥山さんの直しってどんな形でどういうポイントで入ってくるの？
そうですね、まあ本当にこの話し方はダメとかもありますし、絵が全然立体感がないとかで直されちゃう時もありますし、何もない時もあります。
じゃあ一応彼から出た直しは全部納得できるものだった？
もちろん、はい、鳥山先生の直しは 100%、 むしろ直しがもらえると嬉しいぐらいです。
This is one thing I love while I'm watching interviews like this is I don't feel right saying that Torishima is Toriyama's master because he was his editor and Toriyama was like his own visionary. So I don't want to say Torishima was Toriyama's master, but it feels like Toriyama is Toyotaro sensei, and then Torishima was kind of like Toriyama sensei. Even though it's not the exact same relationship, you can kind of think of Toriyama as kind of a mentor figure. Well, Toriyama was definitely a mentor figure to Toyotaro, and then Torishima was basically a boss to Toriyama, but it's just like that lineage. It's very sad that Toriyama is no longer with us, and just looking at this visual here, just thinking of Toriyama in between these two guys, you can kind of see the lineage from Torishima to Toriyama to Toyotaro. So I just like that Toyotaro and Torishima are now able to like get together and talk and have these types of conversations about Toriyama. I just think it's a beautiful thing.
はい、わあ、ちゃんと見ていただいてるんだみたいな。
反応がないと怖いね。
はい、全部 OK だとなんか適当に流されてんじゃないのかなっていう不安になっちゃったんで、毎回見てもらえてるっていうので直しがあると毎回喜んでました。はい。
鳥山さんと豊太郎君のやり取りの仕事の時は僕はもう関係してないんでね。一切僕は見てない。ごめんね。今話を聞いてて、なるほどねって思って聞いて。はい。
Alright, so that was the segment that I wanted to go over, and another thing that I want to talk about is this last bit where they were talking about all the corrections and stuff. So once again showing Toyotaro loved getting the corrections from Toriyama. if he didn't get corrections, he got concerned that Toriyama was just letting things fly by. So it's good that Toriyama did correct it as much as he did. And it's nice that Toyotaro had such a close working relationship with Toriyama and had such respect for him. And why wouldn't you, man? Why wouldn't you? So this is an amazing interview, and I want you guys to go ahead and watch the full thing because I didn't want to just have the full thing playing here. So go ahead and watch the full thing. Anime Mind Probe. Go ahead and look him up and watch the full thing, guys. A lot of interesting stuff. They talk about the anime. They talk about meeting Akira Toriyama, things like that. So it's very cool. Very cool stuff. Toyotaro talks about how he got in touch with Toriyama for it. And his Dragon Ball Heroes manga and things like that. Nakatsuru talks about Dragon Ball. Toriyama, of course, talks about Dragon Ball. So it's a very good interview. I definitely recommend you guys check it out. But yeah, Toyotaro absolutely silences the haters in this interview where he confirms literally that he created the Moro arc, and he always took Toriyama's corrections to heart and always with a smile on his face. Look at that smile. I like Toyotaro. I think once the manga returns, this is the guy to go with. Obviously, I mean, he's already working on it from the last time we saw him, so he would make sense that this is the guy. But I wanted to include this in the video because some people are still somehow saying that Toyotaro is not the guy and they need to have a new writer come on board. Nah, that's not necessary. Let's just keep Toyotaro on board and continue the story that he and Toriyama were working on together. Anyways, guys, that will be it for this video. If you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe to keep up to date with all things Dragon Ball news and commentary. And I will catch you in the next one. Peace off.